34 male. A few years ago, I had an extremely stressful week at work, so I decided to book a cabin on Airbnb very last minute for the same night on a Friday. I and the dog packed up, and I drove up there about an hour and a half away. I stopped on the way and got a bottle of wine in town about 20 minutes from the cabin. Then I went and got food at a restaurant 1 minute down the road. It had very small town vibes. I got to the cabin around 7:45, just enough light out to start a fire, which I did. The cabin was down a gravel road that was about a 5-minute drive down the main road. It was pretty freaking secluded. Even though in comparison to some actually secluded spots, this was only about 20 minutes from a gas station. There was no self-service near the cabin. It stopped a minute down the road. I didn't mind that because it was nice to decompress. Reviews of the place were all great, but it had electricity and a clean updated bathroom, microwave and fridge. Nothing fancy, but clean. It had a nice front porch to sit on, and there were windows on every wall of the building to see out into the woods around it. The driveway came up from the backside of the cabin and stopped completely alongside the right. We sat around the fire until about 11 to 11:30. I put the fire out and go inside in bed with the dog. The dog keeps becoming alert to noises outside, but I took it as the woods doing their thing. About 45 minutes into lying in bed, I heard a light knock at the door. To say I was terrified is an understatement. My heart dropped into my gut immediately. I didn't answer, and I heard a light knock again about 30 seconds later or so. Now I was wondering if something is wrong with the Airbnb because there is no cell service. The owner can't get to me. Did I not notice the place was on fire? I don't know. In this scenario, it all sort of runs through your head fast. The door was solid and locked, but there was a window to the right of it on the porch. I turned the porch light on and peeked my head in the window, and a guy was standing there. He didn't seem scary necessarily. He may have been drunk, but he wasn't like smashing down the door or screaming. He immediately saw me. The windows were like mad old and shitty, and I could tell he'd be able to hear me even though it was closed. I said, "What do you want?" And he motioned his head towards the door to come into the cabin. I said, "Why?" With an attitude now, because who the heck is this? He says, "For sex." Now in my mind, I'm like, what? I told him this is highly inappropriate and you need to leave right now. I have a GPS cell phone and will call the police immediately. I didn't have a GPS phone, but I've always been a fast thinker. I hoped it would scare him off. He quickly turned around and left off the porch. The cabin was mostly one open room. I quickly lay back down on the bed, heart pounding. I didn't know if he was going to go get a gun. Something to break in with? Directly across the bed from me is the window that looks out into the driveway. I can see the running lights that turn on when your car doesn't have the lights actually on. I could see them backing up. I lay in bed in fear for about 3 to 4 minutes, honestly thinking of stuff I had to use as a weapon. It was COVID time, so I had rubbing alcohol and a lighter right there on my bedside table. My plan was, if he got in, somehow to light him on fire. I got up after a few minutes and went and pushed the restaurant chair in front of the door. The cabin was elevated, so I wasn't terribly worried about the windows except the one on the porch. I lay back down in bed, lights off, terrified and wide awake until the sun came up. He never came back. I packed up and left as soon as it was bright enough and messaged the Airbnb owner as soon as I got cell service. They said that nothing like that has ever happened and they offered to help me file a police report. I didn't because I live far away and I think it was a one-off thing. Questions to this day for me are the following. How did he know I was there? All I can think is he followed me from the small town I'd stopped in about 20 minutes away. Also, I am a gay man and I'm not necessarily feminine presenting, but if you have the eye, you can tell. I'm assuming the locals must know there is an Airbnb there too. How did he manage to get his car, which looked like truck headlights, down that road quietly with no lights on? Did he push it the last bit of the way? Did I really not notice the running lights? It was pretty quiet except for woodland noises. I didn't hear anybody pull up or walk up. So before I go into this story, I'll just explain that in the lead up to this particular incident, I had a number of strange attempted break-ins and occurrences. So much so that I had to install cameras with motion sensors on every entry and exit in my apartment, just so I could boldly make sure nobody was there when I got in at night. One of the first was encountering a man sitting in my room when I walked into broad daylight. I had stuff go missing the week before, and my roommate said that he had the sense he was being watched there that week. So I'm on my way home from a night out and I start going through my phone. I see I have a message on Tinder to check it out. The girl looks attractive, but I think she's a catfish because she sounds so eager to meet me, and I know that when something sounds too good to be true, it usually is. So I get home and she sends me her address. I check it and she's literally a 5-minute walk away. I'm drunk and it sounds appealing, even just the attention, but again, I don't believe her. So I say, video call me, and she surprisingly agrees. I see the call coming in, and I'm not sure what to expect, but surprisingly it's the person. She seems nice. Says she's high and wants to smoke and have some company, and I agree. Now I'm kind of excited. Maybe I'll actually really hit it off with her, and she lives a stone's throw away, so I have a shower, grab some liquor, and head over. So I'm on the way. I'm walking. I'm nearing her place. I look across the street and through this archway that leads into the courtyard for this apartment block. At the end of the anchored corridor, I see a man glance at me and then pretend to look at his phone. I walk past and I don't know why, but I'm sure it's to do with the paranoia I've been experiencing. But I stop and decide to walk back. As I come to the arch again, I see the guy's head peek out around the corner, and on making eye contact, he juts back rapidly. When I'm in full view of the arch tunnel again, the man is seemingly immersed in his phone again, and he starts walking around the corner and down the street. I stand there and look to see if he will look back, but he doesn't, and I hear a girl's voice behind me. It's the girl, and she's like, "Hey, come in." It feels like an episode of To Catch a Predator, but she's clearly in her early 30s, so I start to relax again, but only briefly. We walk up a flight of steps to get to the apartment, but then she starts veering down a flight of steps and tells me she has a basement apartment. I follow her and I'm calm until I get into the living room. I don't know how to describe where there was nothing there to make me feel nervous, but that was exactly it. It was so bare, just a sofa and, like a kitchen table, just the complete opposite of what I imagined. I've dated girls and it just wasn't a girl's apartment. I don't know if that makes sense. So now she's like, "Come into my room." And I get this overwhelming sense of fear, like something is telling me it's a trap. Don't do it. You're walking into a honey trap. But I try to tell myself I'm being paranoid and try to relax again. So I follow her, and it's a tiny box room. There's a bed and an empty bedside drawer. Now the thing that weirds me out the most is there's another door, which I could only assume leads to a bathroom. The door is closed, but there's a very obvious pool of water coming out from underneath the door, like something had overflowed but stopped. I'm about to ask, but I don't, as her hand cups and squeezes my crotch area, and I'm taken aback at how forward she starts to become. She kisses me while guiding my hand down the front of her sweats inside her underwear, and whispers for me to take my clothes off. I start to open my shirt, and before I can, she's butt naked already. She is sitting on the bed and starts opening and getting my pants down, straight into giving me head. Sorry about the details, but I'm trying to explain. 1. Her over-eagerness to get me naked, and 2. The overwhelming feeling that she was trying to distract me to put me in a vulnerable position. Now, she starts to lie back and pull me on top of her, making these over-the-top moaning noises. Then I can distinctly hear something outside the door in the living room that sounds like clothes rubbing against clothes when you're moving in a really quiet place, and footsteps. Not many, but like somebody is sneaking around. As we're getting into it, she tells me my watch is catching her skin and asks if I can take it off. I find this strange, but it gives me a chance to gather myself. I sit up and start to take it off. I ask her why there's water leaking out of the restroom. I don't know genuinely if she misheard me or is completely sidestepping my question, but she just answers, "Yes, I've water here." Grabs a bottle of open water from the side of the bed. I don't re-question. I open the bottle and take a drink. I hear that close on close like footsteps movement again. I can feel there is someone right outside the door and my heart starts to beat. I can also feel my lips starting to burn inexplicably. I think she can feel my uneasiness and starts to kiss the back of my neck. Now, I can't tell you how much I wanted this to be real, not a setup to believe this girl really wanted this, but even if she did really like me, she was way too eager. I say, "What time is it?" and grab my phone. I look at the message where she told me her address and memorize it. I open and go to WhatsApp. I pretend to send an audio message. I say, "Hey guys, I'm at blank this street, basement apartment." I can see the wide-eyed surprised look on her face. "I need one of you to come pick me up outside right away. I can't explain right now, but if you can't come, send somebody to that apartment. If I'm not outside, then I'm in trouble and call the cops." She pauses, stuck for words, and asks why I'm so paranoid. I ask her who is outside, and she doesn't deny that anyone is there, just says her friend, no explanation. I start to get dressed. I feel relieved but also think, am I overthinking this? I say bye and she says see you later, and starts texting on her phone. I open the door. The room is darker than when we went through it first, but I can make out the silhouette of mostly everything. I don't see any other room though, and wonder where the heck her friend is or why there was somebody in that room. I have the jitters walking through the room. It's only a short trip, but I'm envisioning someone jumping out from out of nowhere and bludgeoning me with something. I get to the stairs. I go up. I rush to the door and can't figure out how to open it. I can feel somebody coming behind me up the stairs. My adrenaline is kicked in 100x. It's her. She goes and opens it. I say thank you and I leave. I check the cameras before going to my apartment. Nobody has triggered them. I sit in the kitchen and wonder, was I being crazy? I go to my room and get into bed and surprisingly get a call from her again, and she's being cool. She tells me to stop being so paranoid and come back. Now I'm actually half thinking about it, thinking I've been acting insane, but something just clicks. A theory I had been having that would make sense of this. I tell her I can't. She asks why, and I tell her that my roommate is on the phone to the cops to stay the heck away. I have cameras everywhere. She pauses and then says, which still gives me the creeps, I know your roommate isn't home from work yet, and hangs up. So the weeks before this, as I explained, I had a few attempted break-ins. I always thought it was the roof because I'm on the top floor, but the cameras never caught anything. What I didn't understand was how they were getting in. The apartment next door to me, the only one on that floor, was occupied by the landlord's brother. He has what I'm guessing is dementia or something similar, and he kind of hoards and takes random things in and out every so often. I hadn't seen him in a while, but had heard movement in the apartment. I knew it was happening. It just all clicked. People were coming down the fire escape and in through his window. I think possibly staying there, stealing from him, and using my Wi-Fi as I had the code left on the wall. I think that night they decided to rob me, knowing my roommate wouldn't be home until at least 4, and somebody was watching me while I was out in the neighborhood. When they realized I was going home early, they tried to distract me. I told the landlord I thought people were going into the apartment. I don't know about the clutter in there. Could you tell me? But I know the window was unlocked, and he stayed with an elderly lady on the second floor who looks after him. There hasn't been much activity since, so I hope this is the end of it. I didn't call the police because I wasn't sure if I was being crazy, but I knew deep down I wasn't. But even when I tell people, I can see they're like, okay. This happened literally 30 minutes ago. I'm 15, female, a short petite size. I live in Florida, so it was raining all morning today, and I decided to go on a run in the evening. It was a regular run. I don't like to run in my neighborhood just because there are too many turns and it messes me up. I'm on the side of the highway on the sidewalk where usually bikers and people walking their dogs are. There's a fire station close to me, and I feel relatively safe most of the time. I carry pepper spray and always have my phone on me. I stopped at the 2-mile point and turned around and started walking, texting my mom where I was and that I was coming home, changing the music, etc. I noticed a golf cart stopped ahead of me that I had run by before that same day. I recognized it by the smell of weed coming from it, and occupying it was an old man who I was earlier not paying attention to because there was a golf course right there where usually old people go. I already get a bad feeling being a teenage girl and having something like this happen before. I walk past it and he tries to say something to me. I completely ignore it and just start sprinting away. I turn my head back and the headlights are on, and this man is following me in his golf cart. I'm freaking out at this point, so I call my mom, and I'm crying while actually running for my life. I see a group of old people in a golf cart going into a neighborhood, so I flag them down for help and get in their car. At this point, the guy following me is right there and continues literally following the people I'm with, trying to get to me. My mom is pissed off and thinks that the people who literally saved my life are the ones trying to kidnap me. She eventually gets there and figures out they helped me instead of kidnapping me. I know this story is nothing serious, and I'm very thankful that nothing bad happened to me, but I keep thinking, what would have happened if those people weren't there and he got me? I could never outrun a golf cart, and there was nothing but random neighborhoods around me. For context, this was 4 years ago. I'm 20 now. I was 16 and got my first job at a Midwestern-based store that sold hunting, fishing, construction, and farming stuff. We had a tire shop connected to it as well. Of course, there were some creeps that shopped there. Old men that liked to hit on and stalk the 16-year-old girls that worked there. I had my fair share of geezers that continuously came to my register or tried to talk to me for hours. I'm a relatively tough female, so I could take it. I just had to make sure to stick with coworkers after work while going to my car. One day I saw a new dude working. He didn't seem to be much older than me. I remember thinking he was cute enough. His job was to bring the carts back inside from the parking lot and keep them organized. I think we had a tiny exchange one time, but I don't remember anything of it. One day he came in my checkout line on his day off with his friend. He told me his name was Charles, but he went by Alex, for whatever reason. I decided to look for him on Facebook since I thought he was cute, and I had other coworkers I was friends with. I found him and sent him a friend request. He accepted it, and to try and be smooth, I pretended I accidentally sent him a message that was supposed to go to someone else. Cheesy, I know. We'd started to message back and forth. I got his number and his Snapchat. He moved from our main store to our tire shop, so I didn't actually see him at work. Things started to get weird. Over social media, he would start to get sexual, which I would go along with because he was attractive to me. I soon found out that he was 24 years old. I honestly didn't think to ask how old he was because he looked maybe 18. He would ask me, "So you like older dudes?" I would say I didn't know, and he would reply, "Well, I hope you do, because I like you." And soon after, he asked me if we could meet up after work to make out. That was a huge red flag. I started to fade away from him because this in itself was creepy. I didn't think to block him. I just thought to avoid him. Young and naive, I know what you're thinking. He would start to spam me with messages and send me pictures of his ejaculation in his underwear, pictures of his man parts, etc. I did end up blocking him when this happened, but he continued to make more accounts to message me. I was talking with my female coworker one day who was only a year older than me. I told her about him, and she said he was really gross. She showed me some messages he sent her that said that he likes to be peed on and that he wants to drink it. She asked him if he liked poop too. And he replied, "Yeah, is that weird?" That same night, she showed me her messages. He messaged me over an account on Facebook and asked if he could eat my poop. He also asked me before we had sex if I could go pee and he could lick me clean. It makes me shudder to think about that. I soon after quit my job and unfortunately was too dumb not to report him. I stayed in contact with a few coworkers who all said he'd been fired for unknown reasons. I'd blocked all of his accounts, and after I left, he seemed to stop trying to contact me. Every time I see someone who even looks a little bit like him, I swear I almost have a heart attack. I'll be damned if I ever see Charles again. I knew Robert Fisher. I had just written a post about one of my best friend's dad being a murderer and mentioned that I knew Brittany and Bobby as well. I figured I'd write a separate post dedicated to them. It's absolutely surreal to know somebody in your real life who's on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list, America's Most Wanted and Unsolved Mysteries. I attended Pima Elementary School in Scottsdale, Arizona from the late 90s to early 2000s with his kids Brittany and Bobby. Brittany and I were the same age and in the same grade. We were both on the honor roll and we played on the same basketball team together. Bobby, Robert Jr., was about 2 years younger than us, I believe. He didn't seem like the typical annoying little brother. Brittany always involved him, cared and looked out for him. Their mother, Mary, was very sweet and very involved in their lives and our school functions. We all attended the same church together a few times. The kids were even in the choir. Brittany was a typical preteen. She had a lot of friends and was funny, smart, and polite, as was Bobby. Typical kids. They were both pretty shy and quiet, but always very kind, and everybody seemed to love them. I know people say this stuff all the time about others that are no longer with us, but this is the truth. They were good kids. Robert came to some of our basketball games and sat all the way in the back of the stands, alone and silent, totally antisocial. My father tried to conversate with him a few times to no avail. He didn't like Robert at all. He just had these cold eyes that just looked right past you. He never cheered or congratulated Brittany. It seemed more like he had to be there than actually wanting to be there. He honestly gave me the heebie-jeebies. You could tell he was a strict parent, not a huggable guy, that tells his kids he loves them. He was a hunter, a military guy, an avid outdoorsman, and more importantly, just a huge POS. On a regular weekday morning, the news was on, and I was called into the living room where my parents were watching breaking news. Live on TV was Brittany and Bobby's house up in flames. At this point, nobody knew if anybody was in the house or not, and I just remember praying that they were safe. It took a while for the fire to be put out, but once it was, the news was grim. Mary was found with a slit throat and a gunshot wound to the head, and the kids' throats were also cut. How scared they must have been still breaks my heart. The police said they were found in their beds, so my hope and wishes were that they were sleeping. It was tragic. Robert was nowhere to be found as days went by. Our school was filled with grief counselors, and a lot of my classmates went by the house to pray for the family and place signs there. It was a horrific shock to our community, and news stations played it out for days on end. There was so much speculation as to what happened. Robert's parents were in complete denial that he would do such a thing. Who could blame them? And insisted that somebody else did it and he must be in some sort of trouble. Some people even speculated it had to do with some sort of gambling debt that he owed. Come to find out that he cheated on his wife in the past. They had some sort of argument the night before. I'm not sure if that's what the fight was even about or not, but she wanted to leave him and he just couldn't handle the thought of a divorce. His truck and his dog were found over a week later in Tonto National Forest, about 50 miles north. The whole thing is gut-wrenching and heartbreaking. What I still can't get over is the fact that he brought his dog along with him but brutally murdered his own children. It sickens me to the core. Needless to say, the police scoured the woods for days and didn't find any other piece of evidence as to where he could have gone. Some people believe he's dead, and some people, like myself, believe he's still out there on the run under an assumed identity. It would make me feel better to think he was dead and burning in hell for what he did, but he was such an avid outdoorsman, like I previously stated. that I believe he absolutely could have survived in those woods and got away. I even think he could have used those woods as a diversion for the police before he left and went somewhere else. I never found his body, so it's not too hard to imagine. He could have fled to Mexico and could be living a carefree life somewhere. But I hope he's caught in his lifetime so Mary's family can finally get closure and justice, and this piece of shit can rot in the prison where he belongs. More than just a creepy encounter, this is a tragic story that touched all of our lives, and I'm glad it's still being talked about today. I'll never forget Brittany and Bobby.